If you were going to talk to a recruiter today, would you be ready? Would you be able to clearly explain what makes you different and why you could be a good fit? Let's talk about how to show up and be ready to talk to an engineering recruiter. Let's jump into it. Welcome, my name is Jeff Perry, author of The Intentional Engineer. I'm an engineering coach and engineering recruiter, and I want to talk about the purpose and process of engineering recruiter calls. Now, these calls can decide a number of things. One, whether or not you move forward. Recruiters have a lot of people they're trying to talk to. They have a role they're trying to fill, and so you are one of many to start, okay? We're trying to nail down to see if there's a fit, and we're trying to make sure that there's a salary range agreement. If it can't work, then it's not going to work, but we at least want to make sure we're in the right ballpark, even if there's sometimes budge room on either side, okay? But also, your conversation with the recruiter can be influential even if this particular role isn't a fit, so you can do your best still to show up and be ready. So I'm going to talk about 5 things that you can do to be ready for that recruiter call. Number 1 is to be ready and tell your story. You want them to be able to summarize the role that you have right now, the strengths that you have. I call them genius zones. The target role, the things that you're really looking for. Because even, again, if this role isn't a great fit, maybe the recruiter knows someone, or maybe they have another role they're trying to fill inside the organization or somewhere else, right? Depending on if it's an internal or an external recruiter. And also talk about why you would even be open for a change. That helps them know. So when you can talk to a recruiter, help them to help you, whether or not this particular role that they're originally reaching out for is the fit. Number 2, know your resume. You got to be able to know your history. If there's any gaps, or be able to explain them. You have to be able to clearly show and communicate the impact that you have brought in your previous roles and your current role, right? If there's anything about confusion around some of the different options you've taken, if you have a non-traditional path, you'd be able to explain that in a reasonable way and showcase how that can actually show up as a benefit. And if you have short stints that looks like job hopping, well, maybe you want to be able to explain that as well. So be ready to explain and talk through your background and your history in a meaningful way and tie it to how those can be positives for the potential hiring company. Point 3, and we've already talked about this a little bit, but you have to be able to know and communicate what you want. This is where a lot of engineers fail because they aren't really clear. They're just sort of going about the motions. They're being opportunistic as things come up. But you want to know, what do you want to be working on? What kind of working arrangement, remote, hybrid, in-person, what's best for you? Are you willing to relocate? Yes or no? What's your target for compensation? And what are the types of industries that you really want to work on and apply your genius zones and expertise into? And if things are aligning there, fabulous. If not, you don't need to consider this, but you can still communicate that so that this recruiter knows that and maybe can put that in their notes, and you never know when they're going to circle back because they keep people in their databases, and if they're good at it, they have ways to mine those back and get people for right fits for roles that may come up later. Now, point number 4 I want to bring up is to be kind and respectful the whole way. Now, this isn't about specific things, but it's more about your mindset to be curious, to not just say, okay, is this going to be a yes or no, but really get curious, to seek to understand and be willing to go with and consider the things that a recruiter is sharing with you. And that leads me to point number 5, is to have clear questions ready. So about this specific role, when's the role open, what does success look like, but also some of the other things that they may be working on. You may want to understand the process. What I've seen is too many engineers will approach these recruiter calls as just a checklist, and we just got to get through this so we can get onto the real stage. Well, every single interaction you have with people matters. And if you are showing up in these calls unprepared and not really interested, that's going to show, and you're going to be relegated pretty quickly for this role or others. So show up ready with these things that I shared with you, and you'll be at the top end of someone who this recruiter wants to advocate for to place you in front of the hiring team. Thanks so much for being here. If you are an engineer who's trying to make an intentional career transition, I'd love to talk and reach out. I've got a bunch of free resources at jeff-perry.com/resources that you can get, especially my career clarity checklist, which I think is very helpful. And there are a bunch of other resources out there. So keep coming back, and I'll be here to share more tips and tricks on engineering careers. Thanks so much. We'll see you later.